The 23rd Flash on Nature. First written as the 16th note of the 17th Flash, this part of the Risale-i Nur was later designated the 23rd Flash because of its importance. For it puts naturalistic atheism to death with no chance of reanimation and totally shatters the foundation stones of unbelief. A reminder: this treatise explains through 9 impossibilities, themselves comprising at least 90 impossibilities, just how unreasonable, crude, and superstitious is the way taken by those naturalists who are atheists. In order to cut short the discussion here, and because these impossibilities have been explained in parts in other sections of the Risale-i Nur, some steps in the arguments have been skipped. It occurs to one, therefore, how is it that those famous and supposedly brilliant philosophers accepted such a blatantly obvious superstition and continued to pursue that way? Well, the fact is they cannot see its reality. And I am ready to explain in detail and prove through clear and decisive arguments to whoever doubts it that these crude, repugnant, and unreasonable impossibilities are the necessary and unavoidable result of their way, in fact, the very gist of their creed. Note: what occasions the writing of this treatise were the attacks being made on the Qur'an by those who called everything that their corrupted minds could not reach as superstition, who were using nature to justify unbelief and were vilifying the truths of belief in a most aggressive and ugly fashion. Their attacks stirred up in my heart an intense anger which resulted in those perverted atheists and falsifiers of the truth receiving vehement and harsh slaps. Otherwise, the way generally followed by the Risale-i Nur is a mild, polite, and persuasive one. In the name of God, the merciful, the compassionate. Their prophet said, "Is there any doubt about God, creator of the heavens and the earth?" By declaring through the use of a rhetorical question that there cannot and should not be any doubt about God Almighty, this verse clearly demonstrates the divine existence and unity. A point to be mentioned before our discussion. When I went to Ankara in 1922, the morale of the people of belief was extremely high as a result of the victory of the army of Islam over the Greeks. But I saw that an abominable current of atheism was treacherously trying to subvert, poison, and destroy their minds. "Oh God," I said, "this monster is going to harm the fundamentals of belief." At that point, since the above-mentioned verse makes self-evidently plain God's existence and unity, I sought assistance from it and wrote a treatise in Arabic consisting of a proof taken from the all-wise Qur'an that was powerful enough to disperse and destroy that atheistic current. I had it printed in Ankara at the Yeni Gün Press. But, alas, those who knew Arabic were few, and those who considered it seriously were rare. Also, its argument was in an extremely concise and abbreviated form. As a result, the treatise did not have the effect it should have done, and sadly, the current of atheism both swelled and gained strength. Now, I feel compelled to explain a part of the proof in Turkish. Since certain parts of it have been fully explained in other sections of the Risale-i Nur, it will be written in summary form here. Those numerous proofs in part unite in this proof, so each may be seen as an element of this proof. Introduction. Oh man, you should be aware that there are certain phrases which are commonly used and imply unbelief. The believers also use them, but without realizing their implications. We shall explain 3 of the most important of them. The first, causes create this. The second, it forms itself, it comes into existence, and later ceases to exist. The third, it is natural, nature necessitates and creates it. Indeed, since beings exist, and this cannot be denied, and since each being comes into existence in a wise an artistic fashion, and since each is not outside time but is being continuously renewed, then, O falsifier of the truth, you are bound to say either that the causes in the world create beings. For example, this animal, that is to say, it comes into existence through the coming together of causes, or that it forms itself, or that its coming into existence is a requirement and necessary effect of nature, or that it is created through the power of one all-powerful and all-glorious. Since reason can find no way apart from these four, if the first three are definitely proved to be impossible, invalid, and absurd, the way of divine unity, which is the fourth way, will necessarily and self-evidently and without doubt or suspicion be proved true. The first way, this to imagine that the formation and existence of things, creatures, occurs through the coming together of causes in the universe. We shall mention only three of its numerous impossibilities. First impossibility. Imagine there is a pharmacy in which are found hundreds of jars and vials filled with quite different substance. A living potion and a living remedy are required from those medicaments. So, we go to the pharmacy and see that they are to be found there in abundance, yet in great variety. We examine each of the potions and see that the ingredients have been taken in varying but precise amounts from each of the jars and vials, 1 ounce from this, 3 from that, 7 from the next, and so on. If 1 ounce too much or too little had been taken, the potion would not have been living and would not have displayed its special quality. Next, we study the living remedy. Again, the ingredients have been taken from the jars in a particular measure, so that if even the most minute amount, too much or too little, had been taken, the remedy would have lost its special property. Now, although the jars number more than 50, the ingredients have been taken from each according to measures and amounts that are all different. Is it in any way possible or probable that the vials and jars should have been knocked over by a strange coincidence or sudden gust of wind, and that only the precise, true difference, amounts that had been taken from each of them should have been spilled, and then arranged themselves and come together to form the remedy? Is there anything more superstitious, impossible, and absurd than this? If an ass could speak, it would say, "I cannot accept this idea," and would gallop off. Similarly, each living being may be likened to the living potion in the comparison, and each plant to a living remedy. For they are composed of matter that has been taken in most precise measure from truly numerous and truly various substance. If these are attributed to causes and the elements, and it is claimed causes created these, it is unreasonable, impossible, and absurd 100 times over, just as it was to claim that the potion in the pharmacy came into existence through the vials being knocked over by accident. In short, the vital substance in this vast pharmacy of the universe, which are measured on the scales of divine determining and decree of the all-wise and pre-eternal one, can only come into existence through a boundless wisdom, infinite knowledge, and all-encompassing will. The unfortunate person who declares that they are the work of blind, deaf, and innumerable elements and causes and natures which stream like floods, and the foolish, delirious person who claims that wondrous remedy poured itself out when the vials were knocked over and formed itself, are certainly unreasonable and nonsensical. Indeed, such denial and unbelief is a senseless absurdity. Second impossibility. If everything is not attributed to the all-powerful and all-glorious one, who is the single one of unity, and is attributed to causes, it necessitates that many of the elements and causes present in the universe intervene in the being of every animate creature, whereas that different and mutually opposing and conflicting causes should come together of their own accord in complete order with the finest balance and in perfect concord in the being of a tiny creature like a fly is such an obvious impossibility that anyone with even an iota of consciousness would say, "This is impossible, it could not be." The tiny body of a fly is connected with most of the elements and causes in the universe. Indeed, it is a summary of them. If it is not attributed to the pure eternal and all-powerful one, it is necessary for those material causes to be themselves present in the immediate vicinity of the fly, rather, for them all to enter into its tiny body, and even for them to enter each of the cells of its eyes, which are minute samples of its body. For if a cause is of a material nature, it is necessary for it to be present in the immediate vicinity of and inside its effect. And this necessitates accepting that the constituents and elements of the universe are physically present inside that minute cell, a place too small even for the tip of its antenna, and that they work there in harmony like a master. A way such as this, then, shames even the most foolish of the sophists. Third, impossibility. It is an established rule that if a being has unity, it can only have issued from a single being from one hand. Particularly if it displays a comprehensive life within a perfect order and sensitive balance, it demonstrates self-evidently that it did not issue from numerous hands, which are the cause of conflict and confusion, but that it issued from a single hand that is all-powerful and all-wise. Therefore, to attribute such a well-ordered and well-balanced being which has unity to the jumbled hands of innumerable, lifeless, ignorant, aggressive, unconscious, chaotic, blind, and deaf natural causes, the blindness and deafness of which increase with their coming together and intermingling among the waves of numberless possibilities, is as unreasonable as accepting innumerable impossibilities all at once. If we leave this impossibility aside and assume that material causes have effects, these effects can only occur through direct contact and touch. However, the contact of natural causes is with the exteriors of living beings. And yet, we see that the interiors of such beings, where the hands of material causes can neither reach nor touch, are 10 times more delicate, well-ordered, and perfect as regards art than their exteriors. Therefore, although tiny animate creatures on which the hands and organs of material causes can in no way be studied, indeed, they cannot touch the creature's exteriors all at once even, are more strange and wonderful as regards their art and creation than the largest creatures, to attribute them to those lifeless, unknowing, crude, distant, vast, conflicting, deep, and blind causes can result only from a deafness and blindness compounded to the number of animate beings. The second way. This is expressed by the phrase, "it forms itself." It too involves many impossibilities and is absurd and impossible in many aspects. We shall explain 3 examples of these impossibilities. First impossibility. O you obstinate denier! Your egotism has made you so stupid that somehow you decide to accept 100 impossibilities all at once. For you yourself are a being and not some simple substance that is inanimate and unchanging. You resemble an extremely well-ordered machine that is constantly being renewed and a wonderful palace that is undergoing continuous change. Particles are working unceasingly in your body. Your body has a connection and mutual relations with the universe, in particular with regard to sustenance and the perpetuation of the species, and the particles that work within it are careful not to spoil that relationship nor to break the connection. In this cautious manner, they set about their work as though taking the whole universe into account. Seeing your relationships within it, they take up their positions accordingly. and you benefit with your external and inner senses in accordance with the wonderful positions that they take. If you do not accept that the particles in your body are tiny officials in motion in accordance with the law of the pre-eternal and all-powerful one, or that they are an army or the nibs of the pen of divine determining with each particle as the nib of a pen, or that they are points inscribed by the pen of power with each particle being a point, then in every particle working in your eye there would have to be an eye such as could see every limb and part of your body as well as the entire universe with which you are connected. In addition to this, you would have to ascribe to each particle an intelligence equivalent to that of 100 geniuses, sufficient to know and recognize all your past and your future and your forebears and descendants, the origins of all the elements of your being and the sources of all your sustenance. To attribute the knowledge and intelligence of 1,000 Platos to a single particle of one such as you, who does not possess even a particle's worth of intelligence in matters of this kind, is a crazy superstition 1,000 times over. Second impossibility. Your being resembles 1,000 domed wondrous palace in which the stones stand together in suspension and without support. Indeed, your being is 1,000 times more wonderful than such a palace, for the palace of your being is being renewed continuously in perfect order. Leaving aside your truly wonderful spirit, heart, and other subtle faculties, each member of your body resembles a single domed part of the palace. Like the stones of a dome, the particles stand together in perfect balance and order, demonstrating the eye and the tongue, for example, each to be a wondrous building, extraordinary work of art, and miracle of power. If these particles were not officials dependent on the command of the master architect of the universe, then each would have to be both absolutely dominant over all the other particles in the body and absolutely subordinate to each of them, and both equal to each, and, with regard to its dominant position, opposed, and both the origin and source of most of the attributes that pertain only to the necessarily existent one, and extremely restricted, and both in absolute form and in the form of a perfectly ordered individual artifact that could only, through the mystery of unity, be the work of the single one of unity. Anyone with even a particle of intelligence would understand what an obvious impossibility this is, to attribute such an artifact to those particles. Third impossibility. If your being is not written by the pen of the pre-eternal and all-powerful one, who is the single one of unity, and is instead printed by nature and causes, there would have to be printing blocks in nature not only to the number of cells in your body, but to the number of their thousands of combinations which are arranged in concentric circles. For if this book, for example, which we hold in our hands, is written, a single pen may write it relying on the knowledge of its writer. If, on the other hand, it is not written and is not attributed to its writer's pen, and if it is said that it exists of its own accord, or it is ascribed to nature, then, as a printed book, it would be necessary for there to be a different iron pen for each letter so that it could be printed. In a printing press, there have to be pieces of type to the number of letters in the alphabet, so the letters in the book come into existence by means of them, pens to the number of those letters being necessary in place of a single pen. As may be seen, sometimes a whole page is written in a single large letter from among those letters with a small pen in fine script, in which case 1,000 pens would be necessary for one letter. Rather, if it took the form of your body, with all its components one within the other in concentric circles, there would have to be printing blocks in each circle for each component to the number of the combinations that they form. Now, see if you claim this, which involves 100 impossibilities, to be possible, then again if they are not attributed to a single pen, for those well-ordered, artistic pieces of type, faultless printing blocks, and iron pens to be made, further pens, printing blocks, and letters to the same number as themselves would be necessary. And they too would have to have been made, and they too would have to have been well-ordered and artistically fashioned, and so on. It would carry on in succession ad infinitum. There, you too understand. This way of thinking is such that it involves impossibilities and superstitions to the number of particles in your body. O denier of God, see this and quit the way of misguidance. The third way. Nature necessitates it, nature makes it. This statement contains many impossibilities. We shall mention 3 of them by way of examples. First impossibility. If the arts and creativity which are discerning and wise to be seen in beings, and particularly in animate beings, are not attributed to the pen of divine determining and power of the pre-eternal Son, and instead are attributed to nature and force, which are blind, deaf, and unthinking, it becomes necessary that nature either should have present in everything machines and printing presses for their creation, or should include in everything power and wisdom enough to create and administer the universe. The reason for this is as follows. The sun's manifestations and reflections appear in all small fragments of glass and droplets on the face of the earth. If those miniature, reflected imaginary suns are not ascribed to the sun in the sky, it is necessary to accept the external existence of an actual sun in every tiny fragment of glass, smaller than a match head, which possesses the sun's qualities, and which, though small in size, bears profound meaning, and therefore to accept actual suns to the number of pieces of glass. In exactly the same way, if beings and animate creatures are not attributed directly to the manifestation of the pre-eternal Son's names, it becomes necessary to accept that in each being, and especially animate beings, there lies a nature, a force, or quite simply a God that will sustain an infinite power and will and knowledge and wisdom. Such an idea is the most absurd and superstitious of all the impossibilities in the universe. It demonstrates that a man who attributes the art of the creature of the universe to imaginary, insignificant, unconscious nature is without a doubt less conscious of the truth than an animal. Second impossibility. If beings, which are most well-ordered and well-measured, wise, and artistically fashioned, are not ascribed to one who is infinitely powerful and wise, and instead are attributed to nature, there has to be present in every bit of soil as many factories and printing presses as there are in Europe, so that each bit of soil can be the means for the growth and formation of innumerable flowers and fruits, of which it is the place of origin and workshop. The seeds of flowers are sown in turn in a bowl of soil, which performs the duty of a flower pot for them. An ability is apparent in the bowl of soil that will give shapes and forms which differ greatly from one another to all the flowers sown in it. If that ability is not attributed to the all-glorious and all-powerful one, such a situation could not occur without there being in the bowlful of soil material, different and natural machines for each flower. This is because the matter of which seeds, like sperm and eggs for example, consist is the same. That is, they consist of an odorless, formless, past-like mixture of oxygen, hydrogen, carbon, and nitrogen. Together with this, since air, water, heat, and light also are each simple, unconscious, and flow against everything in floods, the fact that all different forms of those flowers emerge from the soil in a most well-ordered and artistic fashion self-evidently and necessarily requires that there are present in the soil, in the bowl, in material, miniature printing presses, and factories to the number of presses, and factories in Europe so that they could view this great number of living fabrics and thousands of various embroidered textiles. So you can see how far the unbelieving thought of the naturalists has deviated from the realm of reason. And although brainless pretenders who imagine nature to be a creature claim to be men of science and reason, see just how distant from reason and science is their thought, so that they have taken a superstition that is in no way possible, that is impossible, as a way for themselves. See this and laugh at them. If you ask, if such extraordinary impossibilities and insurmountable difficulties occur when beings are attributed to nature, how are those difficulties removed when they are attributed to the single and eternally besought one? And how is the difficult impossibility transformed into that easy necessity? The answer: we saw in the first impossibility that the manifestation of the sun's reflection displays its radiance, an effect through miniature imaginary suns with complete ease and lack of trouble in everything from the minutest inanimate particle to the surface of the vastest ocean. If each particle's relationship with the sun is severed, it becomes necessary to accept that the external existence of an actual sun could subsist with a difficulty at the level of impossibility in each of those minute particles. Similarly, if each being is ascribed directly to the single eternally besought one, everything necessary for each being can be conveyed to it through a connection and manifestation with an ease and facility that is at the level of necessity. If the connection is severed and each being reverts from its position as an official to being without duties and is left to nature and its own devices, it becomes necessary to suppose that with 100,000 difficulties and obstacles that reach the degree of impossibility, blind nature possesses within it the power and wisdom to create and administer the universe so that it might bring into existence the wonderful machine of the being of an animate creature like a fly, which is a tiny index of the universe. This is impossible not just once, but thousands of times over. In short, just as it is impossible and precluded for the necessarily existent one to have any partner or like in respect of his essence, so too is the interference of others in his dominicality and in his creation of beings impossible and precluded. As for the difficulties involved in the second impossibility, as is brought in many parts of the Risale-i Nur, if all things are attributed to the single one of unity, all things become as easy and trouble-free as a single thing. Whereas, if they are attributed to causes and nature, a single thing becomes as difficult as all things. This has been demonstrated with numerous decisive proofs, and a summary of one of them is as follows. If a man is connected to the king by being a soldier or an official, by reason of the strength of the connection he may perform duties far exceeding his individual strength. He may, on occasion, capture another king in the name of his own king. For he himself does not carry the equipments and sources of strength necessary to carry out the duties and work he performs, nor is he compelled to do so. By reason of the connection, the king's treasuries and the army, which is behind him and is his point of support, carry his equipments and sources of strength. That is to say, the duties he performs may be as grand as the business of a king and as tremendous as the actions of an army. Indeed, through being an official, an ant destroyed Pharaoh's palace. Through the connection, a fly killed Nimrod off, and through the connection, the seed of a pine the size of a grain of wheat produces all the parts of a huge pine tree. Note: yes, through this connection, the seed receives an order from divine determining and displays those wonderful duties. If the connection were to be severed, the creation of the seed would require more equipment, power, and art than the creation of the mighty pine tree. For it would be necessary for the pine tree out there on the mountain, which is the work of divine power, to be physically present together with all its limbs and parts in what is only the potential tree within the seed and is the work of divine determining. For the mighty tree's factory is the seed. The determined potential tree within it becomes manifest in the external world through divine power and becomes a physical pine tree. If the connection is severed and the man discharged from his duties as an official, he will be compelled to carry the equipment and sources of strength necessary for his work himself. He will then only be able to perform duties commensurate with the sources of strength and ammunition he is able to carry. If he is required in this situation to carry out his duties with the extreme ease of the first situation, it will be necessary to load on his back the sources of an army's strength and the arsenals and munitions factories of a king. Even clowns who invent stories and superstitions to make people laugh would be ashamed at this fanciful idea. In short, to attribute all beings to the necessarily existent one is so easy as to be necessary, while to attribute their creation to nature is so difficult as to be impossible and outside the realm of reason.